Okay, so we are going to take a look at graphing a trig function, a little bit more complex than what we did yesterday. I'm going to go at 1/2 x plus pi minus 3. So what we looked at yesterday was we already looked at a values, we looked at b values, and then in class we talked about h and k's, but they were not mentioned at all in the assignment. So I want to make sure we go through one that's kind of got them all and kind of recap what we did yesterday and add in these new pieces. So we can determine what the amplitude is based off of our a value. Our a value is -2. The absolute value of that is +2. We take the negative out of that one considering the amplitude, but because the a value is negative, we know we're going to have a reflection. I'll hold on to that thought just a little bit. We'll come back to that. The period, you take 2 pi and you divide it by the absolute value of your b, which in this case is 1/2. So dividing by 1/2 is the same as multiplying by 2. It's multiplying by the reciprocal. So instead of dividing by 1/2, multiply by 2/1, so we get a total of 4 pi. 4 pi is our period. What we've added on here are our shifts horizontally and vertically. So we're going to shift left pi. Remember from past chapters when we have an h value to the opposite sign. So positive pi, we're going to go left pi. And then our k value at the end, it's going to be down 3. We do not have to switch signs there. Now that means my midline, when I did my midline before, would have been at 0. Now it's going to be at 3. And I'm going to do a different color, but I'm going to draw a dashed horizontal line there at 3 to represent my new midline. That's the y equals -3 is what that is. And then my amplitude is 2, so I'm going to go 2 above that and 2 below that. So if I go 2 above that, that puts me at -1. That's going to be the highest that we ever get. And if I go 2 below my midline, that puts me at -5. That's where my minimum is going to be. Now we also are shifting left pi units. So let's say this is pi there. So I'm going to go left pi. Now my entire period is 4 pi. So if I start here and I add 4 pi to that, I'm going to finish at 3 pi. So if that distance is pi, so let's see, I'm at 2 pi, okay, and then next I'm at 3 pi, and that's my full period since I have a period of 4 pi and I started at -pi. If I add 4 pi to that, now that happens to be the correct spacing. I've got my 4 divisions, 1, 2, 3, 4. So I have an entire cycle in that amount of time, and I have my quadrantals, my the 3 extra points in between the beginning and the end. Now I do like to draw a vertical dashed line where I'm starting, so at -pi as well, so I remember those pieces. If you would like, I'm going to change colors. If you want to draw another dashed line at your maximum, so you make sure you don't ever go above that, and at your minimum to make sure you never go below that, you're certainly welcome to do that. So now this is a cosine problem. Cosine problem, we know it starts at the maximum, but because this one's flipped, because this is reflected, the a value is negative, it's not going to start at the max. We have to reflect it across the midline, so that's, sorry, let me say reflect across y equals -3, my midline. So instead of being up at the maximum, it's going to be down at the minimum when we begin at -pi. So that's where I start. The next quadrantal I get, or the next piece that matters, is when I'm at 0. Since I was at the minimum, the next time I'm going to be at the midline, and then the next time I'm going to be at the maximum. And then I go back to the minimum, back down, or sorry, that was the midline. Then I go back down to the minimum to complete the entire cycle. Now I'm going to connect those dots. And we remember that it is periodic, it continues on. That's why on the right side I have it coming bouncing back up with an arrow, and on the left side I have it bouncing back up with an arrow. Don't let your arrows show that it's going to continue down. So that's the end of this graph. I would like to try another one. I'm not going to go into quite as much detail, but I do want to mess a little bit with the period again, kind of in the other direction. So I'm going to go ahead and erase this one. I'm going to put this video on Canvas, so if you want to go back and watch it later, you can. But for now, I'm just going to just get rid of it that way. So let's try another one. Negative sine of 2x plus pi over 2. Yeah, I'll do this. This is going to be kind of a nasty one, probably. Well, maybe not. And I'm not going to worry about a k value. Actually, I just as well. I changed my mind. I'll go plus 3. So amplitude is 1. Period. We take our 2 pi divided by our b, which is 2. 2 pi divided by 2 is pi. We're shifting left again, left pi over 2, and then I'm going up 3. It is going to be reflected across my midline, which got shifted up 3, so y equals positive 3. So 1, 2, 3 is my midline, and then I'll go up 1 and down 1 from there. I'm doing a dashed horizontal line there at 3. Oops. I'll say that this is pi, but I want to shift pi over 2. Sorry, that was a negative pi. I'm going to do a dash line there also. From there, I want to go a full period, which I know is pi. So I start at negative pi over 2, and I add pi to negative pi over 2, which gives me positive pi over 2, which would be right there. Now I need to complete an entire period by there, and I want there to be, I want to cut that distance in half, so a half is at 0, and then I want to cut in half again on both sides, and that gives me enough, the points I want. So if I start at the beginning, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, by the time I complete my full cycle, this one right here is going to be negative pi over 4, and then I got 0, and then I have pi over 4, and then my pi over 2. It is, let's see, I can switch colors for my max and min if you want to do a separate dash line. You may. I'm going to put my dots in a different color here. So sine starts at the midline always, even when it's reflected. It's going to be at the midline. Now, since it's reflected and it's going, we're going to go down first instead of up. So by the time I get to negative pi over 2, I'm down at the minimum. And then by the next point, I'm back up at the midline. And then I go up to the maximum and then back down to the midline. Connect the dots. Pass through the left and right most points, and with an arrow, since they're at the midline, I don't have to bounce back down. I continue on up. Just make sure it doesn't go up past the max min or down below the min. And there's that graph as well. Now you should be ready to do some of these on your own.